This week abroad, St. Vincent and the Grenadines refutes money laundering label.
I ready to take a stand and say, guess what? Keep your contract.
Bahamas workers reject unfair contract.
Investigation into potential Russian meddling.
And the Russia probe heats up. Hello and welcome to This Week Abroad. I'm Andrew Lately. Let's go around to the region. St. Vincent and the Grenadines is rubbishing media reports that refer to it as a money laundering destination. The reports come on the back of an indictment of 2 men in the United States who used the Caribbean nation to funnel money. As international media reported on the indictment of U.S. President Donald Trump's former campaign manager Paul Manafort and a former business associate Rick Gates on 12 charges of conspiracy against the U.S., money laundering and several other financial crimes, they suggested that St. Vincent and the Grenadines was notorious for money laundering. The U.S. media also said the islands were prime money laundering destinations. However, in a joint statement, St. Vincent and the Grenadines National Anti-Money Laundering Committee, NAMLC, the Financial Services Authority, FSA, and the Financial Intelligence Unit, FIU, said they consider descriptions linking the country with money laundering to be uninformed, outdated, erroneous, and inaccurate, and particularly damaging to the reputation of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. In the meantime, Tourism Minister in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Cecil McKee, announced that he expects tourist arrivals by sea and air to increase for the remaining 2 months of the year.
In terms of full capacity, we would have seen quite a large increase in terms of the capacity, the full capacity. If the ship comes to St. Vincent full, those numbers are quite higher than they would have been last year. Last year we welcomed the Britannia for the first time, and they did, I think, about 7 calls last year. This season they're doing 10 calls to the destination. Their capacity is 4,000 passengers and 1,700 crew. And this year we're also going to welcome Fantasia, which is a larger vessel, 4,300, just over 4,300 passenger capacity and 1,800 crew. And they are also going to make 10 calls to the destination. So that should just give you an idea of what is going to unfold for us during this year's cruise season. It means that the capacity in terms of the land tours, etc., will be challenged. And therefore we are asking Vincentians to respond positively, work with the agents. They will identify what is required. Cabinet is willing to offer incentives to persons who wish to get new vehicles to be able to assist with the movement of persons with this increase.
And as the country celebrates Tourism Month 2017, Communications Officer in the ministry says there are a number of activities lined up to engage stakeholders, locals, and visitors.
As part of the season, as we prepare our stakeholders, we'll be having training, human resource development training with craft vendors, because during the month we would always have exhibitions, and we found it important to have training sessions with these craft vendors before the ships come here, so they will be prepared in terms of tourism education, pricing, labeling.
Workers at the Bahamas telecommunication company BTC have rejected a deal with the organization. The workers claim BTC is strong-arming them into taking a deal which includes a 16% pay cut.
For me personally, I ready to take a stand and say, guess what? Keep your contract. I'll do better by myself. And then you can tell me that I have to sign something I've never seen before. You can tell me as the new second man in charge that I must come on. You give me my contract and let me allow myself to go charge my lawyer, and then all of a sudden now, this is the deadline. You already meet the deadline. You all are fired. Come on, fire me if you wish, but I guarantee you all gonna feel the pain.
The contract workers say they are willing to negotiate in good faith, but they aren't sure their employers are willing to do the same.
We have a rapport with a lot of the persons that are customers to BTC. Some of them have personal numbers that would even call us when they have their issues, and we work things out with them. I don't see why BTC is headed this route in treating us as the way they are.
Meanwhile, President of the Bahamas Communications and Public Officers Union, Bernard Evans, says he will not allow the BTC to get away with bullying workers into accepting a contract which isn't fair to both parties.
We understand that the company intends to give the contract to a former employee who left more than 10 years ago. I stand to be corrected in that. But there's no way in hell that we're going to sit here and allow something that was drawn up, that was promised to these men and women in this room, that they can give it to an outsider. There's no way in hell we're going to allow that. All right? So if they think that they're going to try and strong arm and strangle, put a stranglehold on these and try to force them to sign something that is not in their best interests, then BTC have another thing coming.
Guyana Sugar Corporation, Gaisuco, has been on a downward spiral, accumulating debt which the government cannot readily pay off. The industry is now under assessment as the government tries to salvage what's left of the industry. More in this report.
It will take a financial miracle for the Guyana Sugar Corporation to remain in the hands of the government. In fact, the Granger administration is so proactive in its desire to offload the struggling company that an international accounting firm will be hired to value the assets of the Guyana Sugar Corporation for the purposes of privatizing and divesting the organization. Colin Heath, London, a project manager and consultant, heads the Special Purpose Unit, SPU, that was established to handle the transactions. The SPU falls under the National Industrial and Commercial Investments Limited, NICEL. London said that a select tendering process was conducted for an international firm to carry out the valuation. The selection of the companies, one of which will provide the needed divestment services, was narrowed to PricewaterhouseCoopers, Ernst & Young, Deloitte, and KPMG. All assets under the control of Gaisuco, including their financial liabilities, will be evaluated. The tendering process closed 2 days ago. One of the aforementioned companies will be awarded the service contract within 2 weeks. Their preparation of prospectus is due by the end of January 2018. The coalition government still believes that there is a future for sugar in Guyana. Given the size and scope of the dependence on sugar, the administration is of the opinion that sugar production must be protected and must remain part of the economic mix in Guyana's economy. London noted, however, that how sugar is protected depends on a combination of options for the assets that it now has. According to London, sugar lands and sugar factories are not the only assets under Gaisuco's control. The Gaisuco is also responsible for the providing and maintaining of a wide range of other assets, including community centers, sports grounds, recreational facilities, primary health care facilities, drainage and irrigation, and a network of water conservancies. However, it was noted that notwithstanding the critical values of all these and other services provided by Gaisuco, the continued financial dependence on the Treasury and the ballooning debt of the Guyana Sugar Corporation is unsustainable. For Channel 2 Headline News, I am Wendell Jeffrey.
Up next, regional airline Liat recounts damage caused by recent hurricanes. That and more after the break. Welcome back to This Week Abroad. Regional airline Liat took a hit recently as major hurricanes Irma and Maria tore through the Caribbean, leaving behind a trail of destruction. Some of the airline's destinations were locked down as rebuilding activities started, while others were declared uninhabitable. The company is now opening up about how it was affected by the horrific ordeal. This week abroad, we speak with Corporate Communications Manager at Liat, Shavar Maloney. Hello and welcome to the show, Mr. Maloney. Now, firstly, how has Liat been affected by the recent hurricanes?
I think that, first of all, the region was affected, and we, as a regional carrier, we connect the region, and so, the persons that were affected were our customers. For us, it was a lot. I mean, September is the most active month in the hurricane season, but this September with Hurricanes Irma, Jose, and Maria, we really were affected. Hurricane Irma affected Barbuda, which is one of the islands in our headquarter state, which is Antigua and Barbuda. But more so, it affected St. Martin and Tortola, which were two of the destinations that we fly to. And then Hurricane Jose affected us because we planned just in case it would have come through. It didn't, thank God, but we also had to deal with that. And then we took the hit from Hurricane Maria, which affected Dominica and San Juan, Puerto Rico. So 4 of our destinations were affected as an airline.
Now, the last update was that Liat is not operational in 4 territories. What's the latest on that?
So we have resumed commercial operations into all of these destinations. I must highlight the fact that before we got back to commercial, we operated 64 relief flights where we helped to move affected persons, relief teams, relief supplies in and out of these destinations. We have, since October the 8th, we've resumed operations into the affected territories. We flew back into Dominica. We fly weekly into St. Martin. We are flying 3 times a week into Tortola, and we are flying twice a week into San Juan, Puerto Rico. This is important because one of the things is that we want to be able to maintain that connectivity, but we also have to balance the needs of persons who are going in and out. So we are working with the authorities. We have not resumed the full commercial schedule that would have been in place normally. We are gradually working towards that.
Now, when Tropical Storm Erica hit the region, it took Liat approximately 9 months to restore normalcy. Now, in your assessment, Mr. Maloney, how long will it take for this time around?
Well, when Tropical Storm Erica hit back in 2015, we took 9 to 12 months getting back to normalcy on the ground in Dominica. Now, looking forward, we have to recognize that the effects of a Category 5 hurricane on these destinations was much, much more. We are hopeful that it will, that recovery will happen within at least 9 to 12 months so that we can resume a normal schedule. However, we have to look at what was done in terms of the devastation by the hurricanes. We also have to look at putting back in that infrastructure, because the persons who are traveling to these destinations, we have tourists who are going to visit, so we need to ensure that the infrastructure is there for them to go in. We also have to look at ensuring that we can support the schedule on the ground. One of our challenges has been that we have had operational challenges. We are using manual systems on the ground because there's no connectivity. So we're hopeful that within a year that 1, our operational challenges would have been moved, and 2, there would be some sense of normalcy on the ground so that the visitors who want to go to these islands, returning nationals, persons who travel for commerce, can go back to the islands and visit and so use our service.
I know some countries are still not contributing to the airline. What are your plans to get them on board?
Well, the thing about Liat is that we are crucial to connectivity within the region. I know we don't fly to Jamaica, but if you fly anywhere in the Eastern Caribbean, you will see a Liat plane landing and taking off. And so we have had to look at how do we get governments to contribute to, funding this airline, which is so important. One of the things that is happening at the moment is that the shareholder governments have mandated a technical committee, and the technical committee is working on producing a report on the way forward for regional transportation. And one of the things that we're looking at is funding and the contribution from governments across the region. how can they put into a sustainable model that will ensure that we continue to connect the region. So right now, the technical committee is doing its work. They're going to prepare their report, and that's going to be submitted to the shareholder governments, and they're going to look at putting that plan in place. We hope that in that plan, the discussion with governments who are not contributing will see the importance of LIAT, will see the model that the shareholder governments come up with, and see themselves as putting in and funding this model so that we can continue flying in the region.
Is the company exploring going into any new territories?
At the moment, we're really focused on the recovery efforts. We're looking at ensuring that we can continue that connectivity. We are, however, exploring for the medium and long term new territories to go into. So hopefully in the coming years, you're going to see us expanding within the region. We're also working on a few other items such as code shares and interline agreements so that we can partner with other airlines to expand our network, which is important, especially today in aviation. So in the coming years, yes, but for this year into next year, we're really focused on one, the recovery effort, and two, ensuring that our schedule is reliable and on time for persons who are using our service.
Mr. Maloney, can you say whether any of those territories include Jamaica?
I'm not sure. I'm hopeful as somebody who would love to come back to Jamaica very soon. I would love to say yes, but at the moment, no, it's not there. But it's on the exploration cards, so you never know. We just might be landing there one day.
Now, if you were supposed to put a number on the damage caused by the hurricanes, what would that figure be?
Well, our expected losses through December 2017 based on the hurricanes is $6.5 million US. And for the territories affected, they represent 30% of our flights and 35% of our revenue. So in terms of numbers, we're looking at a $6.5 million US loss. We're looking at ways of, as a company, that we can deal with that. But it's important to understand that, especially now, the recovery effort is just as important, but regional transportation and connectivity feeds into that recovery and rebuilding effort.
Shavar Maloney, Corporate Communications Manager at Regional Airline LIAT. Thanks for joining me on This Week Abroad.
Thank you for having me.
Now we go further abroad in a bit, but first, here's a look at how some of the major international commodities ended trading this week. When we come back, former Trump aides face charges of money laundering and conspiracy. International stories are next. Welcome back to This Week Abroad. Amid an ongoing probe into Russia's alleged meddling in the U.S. presidential election, 3 of President Trump's former aides have been charged. Paul Manafort faces charges of money laundering and conspiracy to defraud the U.S. government alongside his business partner, Rick Gates. Here's more.
These 3 men could become the thorn in Donald Trump's side. Paul Manafort, his former campaign chairman, Richard Gates, Manafort's protege, and George Papadopoulos, a former foreign policy advisor to Trump. All 3 have been targeted by the FBI. And by this man, Robert Mueller, the special counsel leading the investigation into potential Russian meddling in the 2016 presidential election. Manafort and Gates have been indicted on 12 charges, including conspiracy against the United States and money laundering. The men's connection to Viktor Yanukovych, former pro-Russian president of Ukraine, is of particular interest to the FBI, as is the alleged laundering of some $75 million. The indictments are related to incidents that predate 2016 and make no direct mention of the Trump campaign or Russian involvement in the election, a fact Trump pointed out on Twitter. But George Papadopoulos, Trump's ex-foreign policy advisor, may be the most politically damaging for the president. Mueller announced Monday that Papadopoulos had pleaded guilty to lying to the FBI about his contacts with Russians during the election. The White House has minimized the role Papadopoulos played in the campaign.
This individual was the member of a volunteer advisory council that met one time over the course of a year, and he was part of a list that was read out in the Washington Post. I'd hardly call that some sort of regular advisor.
Papadopoulos has agreed to cooperate with the FBI. There is still no concrete evidence of collusion between Trump and Russia. But the indictments show that Mueller has taken a broad view of his mandate to investigate potential Russian election meddling.
Over the past few weeks, Northern California suffered its worst ever wildfires, which have left 42 people dead and 100,000 hectares up in smoke. As well as destroying vineyards, the fires also severely damaged many of California's legal cannabis farms. But unlike their counterparts in the wine industry, most cannabis farmers are not insured because their crop remains illegal under federal law. More in this report.
This drive and the sight of the devastation breaks her heart. Kimberly Tate is one of California's many cannabis growers whose crops were affected by the fires. The blaze spared her home, but it prevented her from having access to her property for days. Her plants did not get any water. The ash that fell from the sky has covered some of their leaves. Kimberly fears she has lost the cannabis whose medicinal properties she lauds.
So that's a lot of what I want to do is get some strains that are high in that so that we can treat people with PTSD, which will be a lot of those after this fire, people up here. But I was thinking more like veterans, you know, but now I'll have neighbors who need it.
After having been the first state to legalize medical cannabis, California recently allowed its recreational use. Nonetheless, according to Kimberly, growing it out here remains complicated. She tells us fires
they're gone.
Are just one more challenge.
My seeds, I can start again. I've been through this before when we got raided, where they just, even though we had permits and we're doing the right thing, it didn't matter. They got cut down and all my genetics got destroyed that time as well. And that was 2 years ago. 2.5 years ago. So I've been through this before, and I still have some seeds, and we'll start again.
The disaster that consumed thousands of acres shed light on the predicament of the cannabis community. Ron Edwards is one of its more outspoken members. He gained his reputation as a grower by breeding popular strains like Blue Widow. His operation has been a secretive one for years, and it was no coincidence he ended up in the hills of Northern California.
It's remote, it's poor as far as what the government has for resources. So you've got thousands of miles of area and a small sheriff department.
Ron wants this craft to come out of the woods and gain recognition like other forms of agriculture. He believes that will reduce the risks involved in growing and selling cannabis. Progress has been made on that front. But the nursery owner complains that he is still not treated fairly, especially when it comes to dealing with hazards like fire.
The water board says we can't clear cut around here. You cannot remove trees to cultivate cannabis. So that in fact that those rules do make it more difficult because there is no way to defend this space.
As a result of these challenges, solidarity has been growing in the community, according to Patrick King. This cannabis enthusiast and soil specialist has been leading local recovery efforts. He collects donations and even uses his greenhouse to host exotic animals saved from the fires. It's harvesting season for cannabis, so Patrick explains that he is also providing help with that.
So we're supporting our cannabis community right now by giving them the tools to get out there to the farmers. If somebody needs tools, they don't have money, of course we're sharing that as well too. We have a rental center, we rent trim machines. You know, we have labor that can help you with all of your harvesting right now if you're in need.
Solidarity and flexibility make a big difference these days for growers like Kimberly.
Aren't they adorable? Goats. Micah. It's going good. Oh, no worries. We're at the fairgrounds. Do you still want to meet up?
She is eager to meet with her distributor
So they'll take this and they'll sell
to
this.
hand over the harvest she salvaged. Kimberly's contact is a cannabis processing and resale center. It operates on grounds once occupied by a winery. Flocana prides itself on its close relationships with its partners in business.
Anything that we can do to help reduce the harms to come to the farmer economically because of the fire, we want to do that. So that includes making sure that as much of their product as possible has a way to market, that the product doesn't spoil or go bad or go dry in the time that they're not able to tend to it. So any of those kind of triage support services that we can provide now, we want to provide.
Unlike their counterparts in the wine industry, most cannabis farmers are not insured because their crop remains illegal under federal law. There are no exact figures as of yet on the losses in the fires. There are also many charred vineyards, but those businesses will likely recover faster than their controversial neighbors.
There are growing concerns that artificial intelligence and robotics will take more jobs away from people as they are further developed. A U.S. study that questioned leaders in information technology says automation could impact 60% of businesses by 2022. More in this Al Jazeera report.
Don't expect this bartender to listen to sad stories about your love life. He's made of metal and plastic and has no heart. The world's first 100% robotic bar opened in Las Vegas in June. It's a novelty, but also a warning sign. Till now, most automation-related job losses have been in manufacturing. That's about to change.
Now it's moving over to the service sector, and that makes a big difference.
Jobs such as cashiers, such as bank tellers, jobs in the service industries, jobs in food preparation, jobs in office support, office administrative support. A lot of these jobs have a high risk of automation in the coming 10 or 20 years.
It's already happening in retail stores. More people are shopping online. Forbes magazine estimates 21 retailers will shut 3,500 stores in the U.S. this year. That equals tens of thousands of lost jobs for salespeople and support staff. Who is most at risk? Experts say African Americans, Hispanics, female workers of all races, and people without a college education will lose jobs to automation at the highest rates.
And that's going to really change the face of our society.
Certain cities will be hit the hardest.
About 61% of the jobs in Las Vegas could be automated in the coming 20 years or so. And a lot of these jobs are office and administrative support. They're in sales, they're in food preparation. And so within those industries, we see a lot of workers, doing tasks that could be taken over by a robot in the coming years.
It seems that American workers and policymakers are not ready for the massive economic and social disruption this new wave of automation could bring.
As a society, I don't see us prepared. Our politicians are remarkably silent about this issue. Historically, of course, we have seen plenty of technological waves, but we claim this time it's different. It's really different.
No one knows how this seemingly unstoppable wave of automation will play out. But in communities where mining and manufacturing jobs were replaced by robots, people are suffering from widespread poverty, depression, drug abuse, and alcoholism. Those robot bartenders are going to be busy. Rob Reynolds, Al Jazeera, Los Angeles.
And that's it for this week abroad. Thanks for joining us. We're back next week with more regional and international stories. But remember to catch BATV News weeknights at 7:30 p.m. I'm Andrew Lately. Pleasant viewing.